The room was vast, with a domed ceiling that shimmered like the night sky. Stars flickered faintly above, mimicking the galaxy the council represented. In the center of the circular chamber stood Jacob Miller, his hands clasped tightly behind his back. His face showed no fear, but his knuckles were white from gripping too hard. Around him, alien figures sat in high-backed chairs, their forms strange and otherworldly. Some had glowing eyes, others had skin that shifted colors like liquid metal. They watched him silently, their expressions unreadable. Jacob cleared his throat and began to speak. "Esteemed members of the Galactic Council," he said, his voice steady despite the weight of the moment. "I come before you today not just as Earth's ambassador, but as a representative of a species fighting for survival." He paused, letting his words hang in the air. "Our planet is dying. Decades of neglect, pollution, and overuse have pushed us to the brink. We ask for your help, not out of weakness, but out of necessity." A low murmur spread through the chamber. The council members exchanged glances, some leaning toward one another to whisper. Jacob waited patiently, though every second felt like an eternity. Finally, a tall figure with translucent skin rose from its seat. Its voice echoed unnaturally when it spoke. "Ambassador Miller, humanity has ignored our warnings for centuries. You have exploited your resources, disregarded interstellar laws, and shown little regard for the balance of this galaxy. Why should we assist you now?" Jacob swallowed hard. He had expected this question, but hearing it aloud made his chest tighten. "Because we are part of this galaxy too," he replied. "We may have made mistakes, but we are learning. Every day, scientists and leaders on Earth work tirelessly to undo the damage we've caused. But time is running out. Without external support, billions will perish." Another council member, a being with 6 arms and a crown of crystalline spikes, leaned forward. "And what guarantee do we have that humanity will change? Your history speaks for itself. Greed, violence, and short-sightedness define your species. If we intervene, how can we trust you won't repeat these errors elsewhere?" Jacob took a step forward, his voice rising slightly. "Because we have no choice but to change. Our survival depends on it. We understand now, painfully, that cooperation is the only path forward. Please give us the tools, the knowledge, or even just a chance to prove ourselves." Sarah Bennett, one of the few human-like members of the council, sat quietly during the exchange. Her pale blue eyes studied Jacob intently. She had seen many species rise and fall, and she knew the signs of desperation well. When the murmurs died down, she spoke softly. "It's too late to mend it now," she said, almost to herself. Then louder, she added, "Earth's collapse is inevitable. Even if we offered aid, it would merely delay the inevitable. Humanity must face the consequences of its actions." The words hit Jacob like a blow. He opened his mouth to argue, but no sound came out. Instead, he looked around the room, searching for any sign of sympathy. But the faces staring back at him were cold and unyielding. One by one, the council members turned away, signaling the end of the discussion. Jacob stood frozen, his mind racing. He had failed, not just himself, but everyone back home. As he walked out of the chamber, the weight of his mission pressed heavily on his shoulders. Outside, the corridors of the council building stretched endlessly, lined with glowing panels that cast eerie shadows. Jacob clenched his fists and whispered to himself, "If they won't help us, then we'll find another way." Little did he know, those words would set into motion events far greater than he could imagine. Back on Earth, the situation was dire. The once blue skies were now a dull gray, choked with smoke from endless wildfires. Rivers ran dry, and the oceans crept closer to the land, swallowing entire cities under waves of salty water. In a small, crumbling research facility near what used to be the coast of California, Emily Dawson worked tirelessly. Her lab coat was stained with dirt and sweat, her dark hair tied back in a messy ponytail. Around her, machines beeped faintly, their screens displaying alarming data about Earth's rapid decline. Daniel Harper sat at a nearby desk, his head buried in his hands. He was older than Emily, with thinning hair and deep lines around his eyes. "It's hopeless," he muttered, shaking his head. "We've done this to ourselves. No matter how hard we try, we can't fix it." Emily turned to him sharply. "Don't say that," she snapped. "If we give up now, then yes, it's over. But as long as we're still breathing, there's a chance." She pointed to a map on the wall, covered in scribbles and notes. "We need to focus. If we can stabilize even one region, maybe we can buy ourselves more time." But buying time wasn't easy. Supplies were running low, and funding for their work had dried up months ago. Governments were too busy dealing with riots and evacuations to care about long-term solutions. Outside the facility, the sounds of chaos echoed. Sirens wailing, people shouting, the distant rumble of collapsing buildings. It was a constant reminder of how fragile everything had become. Later that evening, Emily received a message from Jacob Miller. His face appeared on a cracked screen, pale and weary. "They refused us," he said without preamble. "The Council won't help. They think it's too late for Earth." Emily felt her stomach drop. She had hoped, prayed, that the Galactic Council would intervene. Now that hope was gone. "What do we do now?" she asked, her voice trembling. Jacob hesitated before answering. "President Hayes is planning something big. She's not ready to give up yet. Just keep doing what you're doing, Emily. You're our best shot at finding answers." After the transmission ended, Emily stared at the blank screen for a long time. Daniel walked over and placed a hand on her shoulder. "He's right," he said softly. "You're stronger than you think. We all are." The next morning, Emily decided to take matters into her own hands. She gathered her team, a small group of scientists and engineers, and laid out a bold plan. "We need to reach out beyond the Council," she told them. "There are other civilizations out there, ones that might be willing to listen. If we send a signal, a plea for help, we might find allies who care more about survival than politics." The idea sparked a flicker of hope in the room. Together, they began working on a new project, crafting a message to broadcast across the stars. It wasn't much, but it was something. As they worked, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that humanity was standing on the edge of a cliff, teetering between destruction and salvation. For the first time in weeks, though, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, they could pull back from the brink. Outside, the world continued to crumble. But inside the lab, amidst the hum of machines and the determined faces of her team, Emily found a glimmer of purpose. If Earth was going to fall, she wouldn't let it happen without a fight. Jacob Miller returned to Earth with a heavy heart. The journey back felt longer than it should have, each moment dragging as he replayed the Council's rejection in his mind. When his ship finally touched down at a makeshift landing pad outside Washington, D.C., he was greeted by President Laura Hayes. Her face was calm, but her eyes betrayed the strain of leadership under such dire circumstances. "They turned their backs," Jacob said as they walked together toward the presidential bunker. His voice was low, almost a whisper. "They called us beyond saving." Laura nodded slowly, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. "Then we'll save ourselves," she replied firmly. "We don't need their pity or their judgment. Humanity will decide its own fate." Inside the bunker, a group of advisors waited anxiously. Maps and screens covered the walls, displaying real-time updates on Earth's worsening condition. Fires raged across continents, oceans swallowed cities, and millions were displaced. Laura wasted no time addressing her team. "The Council has abandoned us," she announced. "Effective immediately, all communication channels with them are closed. We will no longer beg for help from those who refuse to see our worth." A murmur spread through the room, but Laura silenced it with a raised hand. "Instead, we send one final message, not asking for aid, but declaring our intent to leave this planet." She turned to Jacob. "You'll oversee this. Make sure every species out there hears us loud and clear." Jacob hesitated. Leave? You mean abandon Earth entirely? Laura's expression softened. Not abandon. Survive. If we stay here, we die. But if we go, we live, and perhaps rebuild elsewhere. It's a risk, but it's the only choice we have left. Over the next few days, Jacob worked tirelessly with a team of engineers and linguists to craft the message. It had to be simple yet powerful, something that could resonate across cultures and languages. They recorded it in multiple forms: audio, visual, even mathematical patterns that intelligent beings might recognize. The core message was clear: humanity is leaving Earth. We seek not conflict, but refuge. To those who watch, know this: we carry hope within us, and we will endure. As the message spread through space, reactions varied wildly. Some alien civilizations dismissed it as irrelevant noise, while others debated whether humanity posed a threat. Among these observers was Zora Quinn, a rogue trader known for her knack for finding trouble, and Prophet in equal measure. Sitting alone in her battered starship, she listened to the transmission with growing curiosity. These humans really don't give up, do they? She muttered to herself, a smirk tugging at the corner of her mouth. She leaned back in her chair, tapping her fingers against the console. Earth wasn't far from her current location, and the idea of meeting these stubborn survivors intrigued her. Maybe they had something valuable to offer, or maybe they were just another lost cause. Either way, Zara decided it was worth investigating. Meanwhile, back on Earth, news of the broadcast sparked mixed reactions. Some saw it as a beacon of hope, proof that humanity still had fight left in it. Others viewed it as reckless, arguing that resources should focus on fixing Earth rather than fleeing it. Protests erupted in several cities, adding to the chaos already gripping the planet. President Hayes remained resolute. Standing before a crowd of reporters, she delivered a speech that echoed around the world. "We are not giving up," she declared. "We are adapting. This is not the end of humanity. It is the beginning of a new chapter. And though the road ahead will be hard, I believe in our ability to rise above despair." Her words reached Emily Dawson and Daniel Harper, still working tirelessly in their lab. For Emily, hearing Laura's determination reignited her resolve. "If we're leaving," she said to Daniel, "we better make damn sure we get it right." Daniel smiled faintly. "One step at a time, one step at a time." And so, humanity prepared to take its first steps into the unknown, driven by desperation, courage, and an unyielding belief in the possibility of a brighter future, somewhere beyond the stars. Zara Quinn's starship descended through Earth's thick, polluted atmosphere with a low hum. The view outside her cockpit was bleak: smoke-filled skies, barren landscapes, and ruins where cities once thrived. She landed at a makeshift spaceport on the outskirts of what used to be Chicago. The area was chaotic, filled with crowds of desperate people, broken vehicles, and makeshift tents. Soldiers patrolled the perimeter, their faces grim but determined. As Zara stepped out of her ship, she adjusted the collar of her leather jacket and scanned the scene. A young officer approached her cautiously. "Who are you?" he asked, his hand resting near his weapon. "Name's Zara Quinn," she replied coolly. "I heard your little broadcast. Thought I'd come see for myself if humans were as stubborn as they sounded." The officer hesitated before nodding. "Follow me. Someone will want to talk to you." He led her to a nearby research facility, where Emily Dawson and Daniel Harper were busy poring over blueprints and data screens. When Zara entered, Emily looked up, surprised to see someone dressed so casually in such a dire situation. Zara smirked, leaning against the doorway. "So you're the brains behind this operation?" Emily straightened, eyeing her suspiciously. "Who are you, and why are you here?" "I'm just a trader passing through," Zora said with a shrug. "But your message caught my attention. Leaving Earth. That's bold, even for humans." Daniel spoke up, his tone skeptical. "What do you want from us?" "Nothing," Zora replied. "Yet, but I might have something you need." She pulled out a small device from her pocket and placed it on the table. It glowed faintly, projecting a map of star systems. Ever heard of Kepler 62f? It's a habitable exoplanet way beyond Council territory. Remote, untouched, and perfect for starting over, if you can get there. Emily stared at the map, her heart racing. Could this be real? Was there truly a chance to rebuild somewhere else? Why are you showing us this? She asked carefully. Zara crossed her arms. Let's just say I've got a soft spot for underdogs. Besides, if anyone's going to survive out there, it might as well be someone willing to fight for it. Daniel frowned. How do we know this isn't a trap? You could be working for someone who wants to exploit us. Zara chuckled. Fair point. But look around you. What exactly is left to exploit? I'm offering you a shot at survival. Take it or leave it. Emily exchanged a glance with Daniel. They both knew time was running out. If Zara's information was genuine, it could save millions of lives. We'll need proof, Emily said finally. Something to show this planet exists and is safe. Zara nodded. I figured you'd say that. Lucky for you, I've got more data back on my ship. Coordinates, environmental scans, the works. But here's the catch. Getting there won't be easy. You'll need ships capable of cryosleep, fuel reserves, and enough supplies to last decades. Emily felt a surge of determination. Challenges like these were nothing new. They'd faced worse already. We'll make it work, she said firmly. If this planet is real, we'll find a way to reach it. Over the next few days, Zara stayed close, helping them analyze the data and refine their plans. Her presence was met with suspicion by some, but Emily trusted her instincts. Zara wasn't just a rogue trader. She had knowledge and experience that could prove invaluable. One evening, as they worked late into the night, Zara leaned back in her chair and sighed. You know, most species would have given up by now. Not bad for a bunch of reckless dreamers. Emily smiled faintly. Reckless or not, we're all each other has left. Zara raised an eyebrow. Then let's hope that's enough. With renewed focus, the team began preparing for humanity's greatest journey. Blueprints turned into prototypes, designs became reality, and slowly but surely, a plan took shape. For the first time in years, hope flickered brightly, not because everything was solved, but because they refused to give up. Even as Earth crumbled around them, humanity dared to dream of a new home among the stars. And with Zara's help, that dream felt closer than ever. The construction sites stretched as far as the eye could see, sprawling across deserts, abandoned cities, and even floating platforms in the ocean. Towering structures of metal and glass rose from the ground, their shapes sleek and futuristic. These were the Arcs, massive ships designed to carry humanity's last hope into the stars. Thousands of workers labored day and night, their faces streaked with dirt and sweat, their hands blistered from endless hours of work. Ethan Cole moved through the chaos with purpose. His dark hair was matted, and his clothes were stained with grease, but his focus never wavered. A former engineer who had once built bridges and skyscrapers, Ethan now dedicated himself to constructing the engines that would power the Arcs. Every weld, every bolt, mattered. If even one piece failed, it could mean disaster for everyone aboard. Nearby, Maya Rivera worked on a different section of the ship. She was younger than Ethan, barely in her mid-20s, but her skill with machinery earned her respect among the crew. Her small frame belied her strength, both physical and mental. Maya tightened a panel with a wrench before stepping back to inspect her work. "How's it looking?" She called out to Ethan, who was climbing down from a scaffold. "Not bad," Ethan replied, wiping his hands on a rag. "But we're running out of time. Supplies are low, and half the equipment is falling apart." Maya sighed, brushing a strand of black hair from her face. "Yeah, I know. But what choice do we have? We keep going until we can't anymore." Their conversation was interrupted by the sound of shouting nearby. A group of workers argued over rations, their voices rising above the din of hammers and drills. Tensions were high, and fights broke out often. Resources were scarce, and not everyone believed the Arcs would succeed. Some thought it was better to stay on Earth, to take their chances with what little remained. Ethan and Maya exchanged a glance before heading over to break up the argument. "Enough," Ethan barked, stepping between the two men. "We don't have time for this. Every second you waste fighting is another second we fall behind." Maya nodded, adding, "If we don't finish these ships, none of us are getting off this rock. Now get back to work." The men grumbled but returned to their tasks. As Ethan and Maya walked away, she muttered, "It's like herding cats." Ethan chuckled despite himself. "Tell me about it. But hey, at least they listen to you." Maya rolled her eyes. "Barely. Sometimes I wonder if any of this is worth it." Ethan stopped and turned to face her. "Of course it is. Sure, the odds aren't great, but giving up isn't an option. If we don't try, then what's the point?" Maya studied him for a moment before nodding. "You're right. Let's just hope Zora's coordinates pan out." As the days passed, progress on the Arcs continued, though it was slow and fraught with challenges. Engines malfunctioned, fuel reserves dwindled, and morale fluctuated like the tides. Yet, amidst the struggles, bonds formed. Ethan and Maya found themselves working closely together, sharing stories of their lives before the collapse. Ethan spoke of his hometown, now submerged under rising waters, while Maya talked about her dreams of becoming an astronaut, a dream that suddenly felt within reach. Meanwhile, Emily Dawson visited the construction sites regularly, checking on progress and offering encouragement. She carried the weight of leadership heavily, but her determination never faltered. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the Arcs, Emily stood beside Jacob Miller. "It's coming together," Jacob said, gazing at the massive ships. "Slowly, but it's happening." Emily nodded, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. "I just hope it's enough. There are so many people counting on us." Jacob placed a hand on her shoulder. "We've done everything we can. The rest is up to fate." Back at the construction site, Ethan and Maya finished securing a final panel on one of the engines. They stepped back, admiring their handiwork. For a brief moment, they allowed themselves to imagine what lay ahead. A new world, a fresh start. It was a fragile hope, but it was enough to keep them moving forward. The Arcs grew taller, stronger, and closer to completion. Humanity's future hung in the balance, carried on the shoulders of those willing to fight for it. And though no one knew what awaited them beyond the stars, they refused to let fear stop them. Not now. Not when there was still a chance to survive. The day of the launch arrived, and the air was thick with tension. Crowds gathered around the Arcs, their faces a mix of hope and sorrow. Families hugged tightly, knowing they might never see each other again. Some had been chosen to leave. Others were left behind. The weight of the decision hung over everyone like a storm cloud. Laura Hayes stood at a podium near the largest Arc, her voice steady as she addressed the crowd. "This is not goodbye," she said, pausing to look out at the sea of faces. "It is a new beginning. To those staying, know that your courage gives us strength. To those leaving, carry our hopes with you. Together, we are still humanity." Her words brought tears to many eyes. But there was no time for prolonged goodbyes. The countdown began, echoing through speakers across the site. Workers scrambled to finish last-minute checks while passengers boarded the ships. Inside the flagship Arc, *Odyssey*, Jacob Miller prepared to deliver his final message to Earth. Standing before a camera, he took a deep breath. "To everyone watching," he began, his voice heavy with emotion. "We may have failed our home, but we will not fail ourselves. Humanity has always found a way to endure, to adapt, to dream. Today, we take those dreams into the stars. This is not the end. It is a chance to begin again." His speech ended with a long silence. Then, slowly, cheers erupted from the crowd. It wasn't joy. They were leaving behind everything they knew. But it was determination. They would not let despair define them. As engines roared to life, vibrations shook the ground beneath their feet. The arcs lifted slowly, their massive forms cutting through the polluted skies. People on the ground shielded their eyes from the blinding light, waving until the ships disappeared into the clouds. For a moment, the world seemed quiet, as if holding its breath. Inside Odyssey Emily Dawson gazed out of a window, watching Earth grow smaller and smaller. Her heart ached for what they were leaving behind, the forests, the oceans, the cities, but she reminded herself why they were doing this. It's not too late, she whispered to herself. Not completely. Nearby, Ethan and Maya sat together in the crowded cabin, surrounded by strangers who were now their companions. Ethan held a small photo of his flooded hometown, tracing its outline with his thumb. "Do you think we'll find something better out there?" he asked quietly. Maya glanced at him, her expression thoughtful. "I don't know, but even if we don't, at least we tried. That's what matters." Zora Quinn wandered through the ship, observing the passengers with a detached curiosity. She had agreed to stay aboard as an advisor, though part of her wondered if she'd made a mistake. Still, seeing the resolve in these people's eyes stirred something inside her. Maybe humanity wasn't as hopeless as she'd once thought. Hours passed, and the arcs broke free of Earth's atmosphere. From space, the planet looked fragile, its blue and green hues marred by swirling storms and dark scars. Passengers pressed their faces against the windows, some crying softly, others staring in stunned silence. It was beautiful, yet heartbreaking. President Hayes watched the departure from her office, alone except for a single screen showing live footage of the arcs. She allowed herself a moment of grief before straightening her shoulders. There was still work to do, for those who remained, and for the future of Earth itself. Far away on the Council's homeworld, observers noted the exodus with mixed feelings. Sarah Bennett stared at images of the departing ships, her lips pressed into a thin line. "They're leaving," she murmured, "and we did nothing to stop them." Another council member shrugged. "Good riddance. Let them face the consequences of their actions." But Sarah wasn't so sure. As the transmission faded, she couldn't shake the feeling that humanity's story was far from over. Perhaps, somewhere beyond the stars, they would prove the council wrong. The journey through space was long and grueling. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, but the arcs pressed on, their engines humming steadily as they carried humanity toward an uncertain future. Inside the ships, life became a delicate balance of survival and hope. Resources were carefully rationed, and every system was monitored to ensure nothing failed. Yet, despite their best efforts, challenges arose almost daily. Ethan Cole spent most of his time in the engine room, troubleshooting problems that seemed to appear out of nowhere. One morning, alarms blared as a coolant line ruptured, sending steam hissing into the air. Ethan grabbed a wrench and got to work, his hands moving quickly to patch the leak. Maya Rivera joined him moments later, her face pale but determined. "Need a hand?" she asked, already reaching for tools. "Always," Ethan replied, his voice tense. Together, they managed to fix the issue before it caused serious damage. As they sat on the floor afterward, catching their breath, Maya shook her head. "One crisis after another. It's like this ship doesn't want us to make it." Ethan chuckled dryly. "Or maybe it's just testing us. If we can handle this, we can handle anything." Elsewhere on the ship, Emily Dawson worked tirelessly with a team of scientists to monitor the ARC systems and plan for arrival. They studied Zara's data on Kepler-62f, analyzing its atmosphere, temperature, and potential resources. "It looks promising," Emily told Daniel Harper during one of their late-night meetings, "but we won't know for sure until we get there." Daniel nodded, though his expression remained skeptical. "Let's just hope it's everything we're counting on. If it's not, well, I don't even want to think about that." Tensions aboard the ship ran high. Passengers argued over food rations, complained about cramped living conditions, and grew restless from the monotony. Some questioned whether leaving Earth had been the right decision. What if we're flying into another disaster? A woman shouted during a crowded meeting. How do we know this planet is safe? Emily stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. We don't, she admitted. But staying on Earth wasn't an option. At least here, we have a chance. And that's more than we had before. Zara Quinn, who had kept mostly to herself since the launch, began taking a more active role. She roamed the ship, offering advice and sharing stories of her travels. Her tales of distant worlds and strange civilizations captivated the passengers, giving them something to dream about. Space is full of surprises, she told a group of children gathered around her. Some good, some bad, but you'll never know unless you keep going. As the Arcs neared their destination, excitement mixed with apprehension. When Kepler-62 finally came into view, gasps spread throughout the ship. The planet was breathtaking, its surface covered in lush greenery, its oceans shimmering under two suns. For the first time in months, hope filled the air. We made it, Maya whispered, staring at the planet through a window. Ethan stood beside her, nodding slowly. Yeah, he said, but this is only the beginning. The Arcs entered orbit, and teams prepared scouting missions to assess the planet's safety. Emily and Daniel worked closely with Zara to analyze initial readings. The atmosphere was breathable, the soil fertile, and signs of water abundant. It seemed perfect, but perfection often hid dangers. As the first landing party descended to the surface, the rest of humanity waited anxiously aboard the Arcs. Emily watched from above, her heart pounding. This was their new home, or at least it could be. But rebuilding wouldn't be easy. They would face hardships, unknown threats, and the weight of starting over. Still, as she looked at the faces of her fellow passengers, Emily felt a spark of determination. Humanity had survived wars, disasters, and its own mistakes. Now, standing on the edge of a new world, they had a chance to prove they could do better. It wouldn't be easy, but then again, nothing worth doing ever was. On the Council's homeworld, news of humanity's departure spread slowly at first, like ripples in a pond. Observers gathered in quiet chambers, debating what it all meant. Some dismissed the event as insignificant, a failed species fleeing its mistakes. Others felt uneasy, wondering if humanity's bold move signaled something greater. Among them was Sarah Bennett, who couldn't shake the image of Earth fading into the distance. They're gone, she said softly to herself, staring at a holographic star map. And we did nothing. Her words caught the attention of another council member, a being with shimmering scales and sharp eyes. Why should we care? It asked. They brought this on themselves. Their arrogance, their greed, it consumed them. Sarah turned to face the group, her voice firm despite her doubts. Yes, they'd made mistakes. But isn't that what defines intelligence? The ability to learn, to adapt. We abandoned them when they needed guidance most. Now they've taken matters into their own hands. The chamber fell silent as the council members considered her words. It wasn't often that one of their own questioned their decisions so openly. Yet, deep down, some of them wondered if Sarah was right. Humanity had always been unpredictable, stubborn, reckless, but also resilient. Perhaps dismissing them so quickly had been an error. Meanwhile, back on Earth, life continued in fragments. Cities lay in ruins, and the skies remained choked with ash. But amidst the desolation, small signs of renewal began to appear. A tree sprouted from cracked concrete, its leaves pale but alive. Birds returned to abandoned parks, their songs faint but persistent. Laura Hayes, now overseeing the remnants of human civilization, noticed these changes. She ordered teams to document every sign of recovery, no matter how small. One evening, as she reviewed the reports, a single photograph caught her eye. It showed the young tree rising from rubble, its branches reaching toward the sun. Beneath it, someone had written a caption, "Not too late after all." Laura stared at the image for a long time, her heart swelling with cautious hope. Humanity might have left, but Earth wasn't finished yet. Far away, aboard the Arcs, Emily Dawson stood on the surface of Kepler 62F, her boots sinking slightly into soft soil. Around her, others worked to set up temporary shelters and test the environment. The air smelled fresh, almost sweet, and the sunlight warmed her skin. For the first time in years, she felt a sense of peace. "This is it," Daniel said, joining her. He held a sample container filled with rich, dark earth. "It's fertile. We can grow crops here." Emily nodded, smiling faintly. "It's not perfect, but it's ours. And maybe we'll get it right this time." Zora Quinn watched from a distance, leaning against a rock. She had decided to stay with the settlers, at least for a while. Something about their determination intrigued her. "You humans are full of surprises," she muttered under her breath. "Let's see what you do next." Back on the Council's homeworld, Sarah received a transmission from Earth. It contained only the photograph of the tree and its simple message. She shared it with the Council, watching as their expressions shifted from indifference to curiosity. "They still have hope," Sarah said, "even after everything." For a moment, the Council room was silent. Then, one by one, the members began to discuss what humanity's resilience might mean, not just for Earth, but for the galaxy. They had underestimated humans before. Perhaps it was time to reconsider. As the Arcs settled into their new home and Earth began its slow recovery, humanity proved that survival wasn't just about escaping destruction. It was about finding ways to rebuild, to heal, and to endure. Whether among the stars or on their ravaged planet, they carried the same unyielding spirit. And though challenges lay ahead, they faced them together, step by step, planting seeds of hope wherever they went.